I will read to you first from the preface. Now, some of you maybe have already read the book, I don't know. And then we'll talk a little more. And then, if you want, I'll read more. The name of the book is This Fragile Life, a mother's story of a bipolar son. And you will see where I got the title quite soon. It went through many, as books do, many different titles. In fact, my very first title, I will tell you, was No Sunshine When He's Gone. And I was so attached to that title, and when they told me, I knew about Bill Withers, which is why I liked the title, okay? But finally the press said to me, every time we Google or call up No Sunshine, Bill Withers comes up, you don't. So they suggested I might think of a different title. Okay, preface. It was an ordinary, wonderfully hot summer in 1996. Nothing in particular was happening, except in the summer of 1996, our son, whose name is Mark, made his cri de coeur from Los Angeles. My husband and I were thousands of miles away in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mark was 25 years old, living with his fiancée, Lisa, and pursuing an advanced degree in film studies at the University of Southern California. Earlier that evening, when he couldn't find us by telephone, Mark had called Washington, D.C. to speak with my father, who in turn called us. He wanted to know, so where were you? Sort of like we had to stay home all the time? My father described Mark as being in some sort of trouble. He said Mark was saying strange things and he wouldn't stop talking. We must have talked for an hour. He told us to wait for Mark's call. When I answered the phone a few hours later, I heard the panic in my son's voice. In guarded tones, he whispered, "Mom, they're watching me. I can see them all around. They're watching me. I really don't know what to do. Please help me, Mom." There were tears just beyond his words. His voice sounded hurried, fearful, tight. I felt his agitation, and I almost believed he was being watched. My husband and I desperately tried to figure out what was happening. Was he in physical danger? Was someone chasing him? Was he having a nervous breakdown? His need for rescue was clear. Talking to him in turns, we attempted to convey some degree of calm. We assured Mark that his father would catch the next plane to Los Angeles to bring him home to Philadelphia. I told him that I would be at home waiting. In my absolute naivete, I actually believed that Mark simply needed a few weeks to regroup from the stress of graduate school. In reality, our son was experiencing his first psychotic break, and he would later be diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1. We had been blindsided. Thousands of miles away, Mark had progressed brilliantly, yet sleeplessly, through graduate courses at USC. Amid his studies, he lost his bearings. He heard voices from Neptune, speaking of cosmic designs, which competed regularly with the wisdom of his professors. Mark became gaunt, messianic, in touch with planets and whole worlds of delusion unknown to us. In real time, he would come to meet the cold, metallic life of city jails, hospital gurneys, the suffering of an unquiet mind, to borrow K. Redfield Jameson's phrase. There are few published accounts of families dealing with bipolar disorder. Still fewer are written from a mother's perspective. This Fragile Life is the story of an upper middle class African American family facing the challenges of mental illness. Our son is a graduate of Germantown Friends School, a Quaker institution in Philadelphia, the recipient of a bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and a master's degree from the University of Southern California. Now, I was not naive enough to think that these privileges guaranteed exemption from illness, accident, disability, or even death. But looking back, I realized I had once assumed that giving Mark the best education available would enable him to do whatever he wanted in life and to succeed. As his mother, I never could have imagined that he would wind up handcuffed, barely clothed, dirty, mad, and in jail. When Mark's first psychotic episode occurred, that's when my real education began. The horror of what was happening to Mark was compounded by our family's ignorance. We knew nothing of mental illness, except at what we had viewed in films or read in newspapers and novels. The images of mental illness in popular culture are exaggerated and meant to shock. In them, we saw no resemblance to our son. We were not in close proximity to Mark's adult life and had not been near enough geographically to witness his day-to-day behavior, because he had not lived with us since he left for college at the age of 18. When Mark crashed, what we did was we attempted to piece together the previous months and the previous years of his life. We discovered he had been bouncing from depression to hypomania, back to depression, and then to full mania, often combined with bouts of paranoia and psychosis. And again, we thought, how is it that we didn't know? We also learned that for many years, the exact number yet to be determined, he had tried to quiet his own demons with drugs and alcohol. I learned that the name of this double affliction, which combines both mental illness and substance addiction, to be dual diagnosis. Gradually, Mark descended into madness and then hit rock bottom. Our nightmare existence commenced. Hospitalizations, calls in the night, pleas for money and more money, jail more times than we could admit to ourselves, lawyers, prescriptions when we could get them, doctors, drug and alcohol relapses, and continuous disputes about how to live and how not to live in order to remain well. Mark's journey toward recovery has been long, arduous, and nearly fatal. At this point, it seems an eternity. On the upside, our son Mark is a dedicated poet. The music of words has always fascinated him. He began writing verses when he was 9 years old. Throughout his years of illness, poetry has been tethered to the emotional currents of his daily life. Mark and I, together, decided to include some of his poetry and prose throughout this fragile life. In particular, his post-psychotic explanations and his self-revelations. He writes eloquently of becoming a father while suffering from depression and mania. In haunted words, Mark gives voice to the melancholy of his lost life. He writes, "Oh, what I wouldn't give to have it all back again. The way we lived and how the city lights drowned out the sin, eager to see those freeways. Weave in and out for miles while listening to Friday night DJs spin their hardcore styles. So enchanted, I took this fragile life for granted." My husband and I awake each day with gratitude for our son's willingness to meet the challenges that bipolar disorder brings. At times, I'm still fearful. I feel vulnerable and alone. Our son must take care of his illness day by day for the rest of his life. There is no cure. Bipolar is forever.